I'm Charlynn Johns with Battle Buddy Info. I'm here with Major General James Williams, United States Marine Corps retired. He's one of the co-chairs of Texas Vets Care for Health Care, and we're here to talk about the proposed privatization of the VA healthcare and what that will mean to over 20 million veterans and their future of how they're receiving health care and the impact it will have. Major General Williams, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Can you tell us what you think that privatization, everybody wants to say veterans need to have a choice in where they go, and they want a voucher that can just let them walk into any doctor's office. We've seen through the Affordable Care Act how that doesn't exactly work out as good as it sounds. What do you think that will do for veterans?
Well, I think you've got several challenges here. When you talk about privatization and you say you want veterans health care to leave the VA and go to the private medical community, it has several challenges. Number one, the one linear thing that is common to all VAs is the medical record. So if you decide to do a contract with outside medical services, then the question becomes, where is that medical record resident at? Is it within the VA system and it's given access to everybody, or is it fragmented and everybody uses their own medical record? That could be very devastating for veterans that travel from one end of the country to the other. So if you're in California or Texas or on the East Coast and you go to, let's say, Michigan, and you decide you need to stop at the VA for health care. The question is will anybody know your medical condition or the medicines that you're on? So this creates part of the problem. But I think when you talk about privatization, the bigger question is about reform. What do you really need to do to reform the VA? I think, in my opinion, I think one of the things the Secretary in Congress needs to do, as well as the President, is reduce the VA footprint as far as the administrative costs are concerned. The healthcare delivery generally in the VA is pretty good. Now there's always challenges, whether it's customer service issues or scheduling issues. Of course, Congress is working on the choice program to make that more efficient. But as we saw with the choice program, which was kind of a little bit of the beginning of privatization, is that a veteran could go out, if they were approved, to get health care from any doctor, any facility that was in the system. The problem with that system was Congress only gave them 90 days to do it, and to have the systems and the reimbursement structures put in place so she could do it efficiently caused problems in part of the VA. Now I've heard from different members throughout the country that the choice program was a very good idea, and in some areas it works very well. In other areas it doesn't. Sometimes the doctors wait for reimbursement and that sort of thing. And this is one of the challenges I think you can also have in privatization. So let's say, in our current federal reimbursement systems, Medicare, Medicaid, that sort of thing, or TRICARE, those are federally mandated programs with a panel of payments for different services. Now, generally that works pretty good, because if you think about it, most of, especially Medicare, has been around since 1964. So the question becomes, can you adapt a system like that? Is it going to be TRICARE? Is it going to be CHAMPAs? Is it going to be a new system? We don't know. And so all of those issues have to be worked out. So that's really the challenge in privatization. Medical records, reimbursement, and systems that can actually manage the privatization.
Well, can you speak a little bit about the benefits of having, which you addressed a little bit, about the benefits of having that military culture? When a veteran goes into the Veteran Administration for medical services, they're with other veterans. They're with doctors that treat only veterans. They're with, so if a number of veterans that have that controlled medical record, controlled database, so if they see a wide range of veterans all showing up with the same presentation of symptoms and illnesses, they can begin to address those because they have that data available. If they turn veterans into the private system, there won't be that centralized data to where doctors and treatment professionals can establish protocols to address specific, perhaps combat-related illnesses such as Agent Orange or spinal cord injuries that are have been obtained in combat. So can you speak to that?
Sure. Well, when you think of something like Agent Orange, which is dioxin, the poison that was used for defoliant in Vietnam, the problem is, in fact, in Vietnam today, and of course the president's in Vietnam today, one of the things that's very evident is the results of dioxin. For a long time, that wasn't even considered an issue for veterans, but we know that it caused things like leukemia, birth defects, all of these sort of things. So if you didn't have the VA focused on that, the general civilian medical population doesn't focus on that. And if they did, they would expect Congress to reimburse them for that. And by rights, that's what actually happens now. Congress funds that support. In fact, Congress has been the driver. It wasn't the VA that was the driver for the Agent Orange claims, it was Congress. And so the one benefit I think the veterans have is that by constitutional law, the Congress gains and maintains the VA as it does the military. So Congress is really our friend in this case. And they just have to have the right information to understand, all these challenges. The other area is in mental health care. If you look at the changes that are going on in civilian health care right now, and Texas is a good example. Texas may be 49th, if it's not last, in the United States in terms of mental health care. In fact, if you look at the largest mental health holding facility in the state, it happens to be the Dallas County Jail. And so, is that where we want all our veterans to be?
Exactly.
No. So, the civilian market doesn't really do much, especially in this state, to support mental health care. And there are organizations that do that. But on the whole, the VA would be the biggest driver of managing veterans' health care, and still should be, because it won't be adequately addressed in the civilian medical care program. PTSD and TBI and those types of things, are there good neurosurgeons out there and neurologists? Absolutely. But again, it's that repository of having that common medical record database so that doctors and the supported allied professionals can actually look at that data and say what has been happening on a longitudinal basis to the veterans' care. And I don't think you're going to get that in privatization, not under the current structure.
Exactly. Well, I know that you have a tight schedule, and I appreciate your time so much for coming in, and especially making sure that veterans' voices are heard before this choice is made for them. You mentioned that Congress gets behind the Veterans Administration and drives many of the issues as a true advocate for our veterans. And if privatization occurs, veterans will just become private citizens just like everyone else.
Right.
And they won't have that concentrated effort for people standing up on their behalf. So I thank you for continuing
if you don't
your
mind,
work here.
Let me just
Sure.
say one other thing, because I think this is important. I think it's important for every veteran out there that might see this, is that there's forces out there that want privatization. And I think when you look at the underlying structure of those efforts, there's a lot of self-interest there. There's a lot of self-interest because a lot of the members of some of those efforts happen to be in the healthcare world. In one of the organizations, the co-chairman happens to be the family that owns the largest healthcare organization in the United States. Seems to me that's a conflict of interest. And the veterans need to really understand that. So they have to be informed. They have to understand this issue, because you have a commission on care that's roughly 17 people, and you're going to ask 17 people to make a decision for more than 21, 22 million veterans. And I think every veteran needs to have their voice counted. And unless they understand this, somebody else will make the decision before them. And at the end of the day, the largest political constituency in the United States happens to be veterans. So if the veterans were united, we would control every aspect of what gets discussed in the political realm. And that's one of the things I would advocate for, is the veterans understand, whether you're on the Democratic side or independent or libertarian side, doesn't matter. But do you understand this issue? Because it will affect you and affect your family. And if you don't understand that, you need to get with somebody, one of our traditional veteran services organizations, or an organization that really has the veterans' interest at heart, to get informed. So.
With no monetary gain involved.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Great.
it.